I don't need a clap. You should reserve that for our guests. So good evening, all evening, everyone. Lovely to see the chamber so full, and also evening to everyone who's watching in on the live stream. Hopefully, we should get some of your questions being asked. So make sure to tweet in using the hashtag @CussIan. So welcome to our 16th. Yeah, I know, so it's not particularly amusing, but we go with it anyway. So welcome to our 16th speakers event of Michaelmas term. We've got 9 more to go, so almost 2/3 of the way through. This evening, I'll keep my introduction quite short, but first I need to thank TPP, who are our sponsors for this evening. So thank you very much to them for sponsoring this event very generously. Our guest tonight is an absolute legend of stage and screen. Famous initially for his masterful Shakespearean performances, the last 2 decades have seen him play the likes of Gandalf and Magneto in a series of Hollywood blockbusters. He's won 6 Olivier Awards, 2 Golden Globes, and is a companion of honor. More importantly than all of that, he's a proud graduate and honorary fellow of St. Catherine's College, Cambridge. So Sirian will be speaking for about 15 minutes, then there'll be a brief interview with me, and then we're going to open it to the floor for questions. So without further ado, Sirian McKellen.
Hello, how are you? Oh. I do know him. Hello, are you all right? Hello. Thank you. Well, very nice to be back. I thought I should come back. I've been here quite recently, but as it was announced on the internet just 10 days ago that I died, I thought I'd better just turn up and show you that I didn't. And I didn't really understand what Trump was on about, fake news, but I did look to see, read my obituaries, very nice ones, lovely, actually. And then I read a few more things about myself, that my dog had just had don't have one, my dog had had a serious operation, and I was asking people to pray for him. I'm an atheist, so it's, and then I'm going to be on the front page of Time magazine in January as the Man of the Year. I thought you might like to know that. No, I'm not. No, this is all. But the best news for me was that I was the the richest actor in the world, with assets of $183 million. I mean, if I had $183 million, do you think I'd be coming to Cambridge for the evening? I could buy it. And I've got a line of clothing and a line of perfume and a line of burger restaurants in London. Absolutely amazing. Well, first thing I did when I became an undergraduate was to come down here and pay to become a life member. I'm a life member of the union. In 1958, it cost £8. And having done that, I never came back, really, because I was around the corner at Park Street acting in plays there and at the Arts Theatre, where I went last night to see quite jolly production of Round the World in 80 Days. We never went to the professional theatre. We were too busy acting ourselves. We were rather down on these people who did it for a living. You know, we thought amateur was the word. Well, I'm an amateur. We're all amateurs. We're all lovers of whatever we do, hopefully. And so it stayed with me. But look, I mean, I've been talking to a couple of schools today, and that's what I do in some of my spare time. Village schools outside here. Most astonishing thing about the second one, which was a very well-run school indeed, a newly appointed head teacher, who's determined to follow the law of the land, which is that you may not discriminate on grounds of a number of issues in state schools, including sexuality. You may not discriminate. It's very difficult for schools to know what to do. How do you not discriminate? Well, if someone says gay to another student, meaning gay, not working properly, second rate, that's so gay, they're breaking the law of the land because they're being disparaging in the hearing of gay people, like me. I met a young boy being bullied. Oh dear, he was in tears. He was about 15. He said, I love the theatre. That's good. Yes, and, I like musical theatre, and everyone laughs at me. Oh dear. I said, it'll be all right. Once you get away from school, you'll find lots of boys who like musical theatre, and you'll be absolutely fine. Oh dear, but what a worry it is growing up. So the law of the land is that we won't add an extra worry, and I go around telling them to be nice to each other, and they get the point. My God, they don't even have to have it made to them. No one's born prejudiced. No one's born disliking somebody because they're different. They learn all that. It's like a little baby's back, when they sit up before they can walk, the back straight as could be. Most beautiful thing in the world, a baby's straight back. And then they stand up, and they're still straight. And after about a couple of years, they've started to stoop till they get to my age, and you can hardly stand up or walk. And it's a little bit like that with the brain, I think, or the mind, or the influences that come to bear on a baby. No baby's born with anything other than love. It wants to love everybody. It's interested in everybody. And as I say, these kids don't need reminding of that because they're close enough to birth to not quite be absolutely prejudiced. But what a contrast that is to when I first came out, when I was 49 years old. Because there was a new law being established here called Section 28. And if you don't know what that was, Google it. You will not believe. Section 28 of the Local Government Bill under Mrs. Thatcher said that there could be no talk about homosexuality of a positive nature in any state-maintained school on the grounds that it would be promoting homosexuality. If you talk about the subject, you'll be trying to convert people, change their sexuality. This nonsense was believed and passed. The other objectionable remark in the Act was that gay people only had pretended family relationships. They couldn't have real family relationships because they're not real people, really, are they? Second rate, queer. That was the word I was brought up to believe that I was, queer. And when I was doing that, just after the Second World War, it was illegal to be gay in the UK. Well, illegal for two men to have sex. Illegal. I broke the law, every night of my life until I was 28 years old. And it's no fun. It's no fun reminding yourself that what you're doing is could be punished by prison. I had two friends who were put in prison for making love. Anyway, Section 28 was passed, and that got me involved in politics, really, because it got me out of my closet when I'd been living very happily as a successful actor with a series of live-in boyfriends, quite open to my friends and everybody I knew, but hadn't talked to the press about it. And that was the last bit of coming out that I had to do. And once I'd done that, then I could join in with 10 other openly gay men and 10 lesbians who were going to start Stonewall, which was determined to do two things. One, get rid of Section 28, which we've done, and get rid of other bad laws on the statute books, like an unequal age of consent, which we've done, like not allowing people to serve in the military, that's dealt with, like not making homosexuality a sackable offence if you're a teacher, got rid of that. And, we civil partnership and marriage. Done deal. No more work to be done, except in Northern Ireland, where they're sticking out. They won't allow two men or two women to get married there. And the main block to it is the DUP, the party of 10 members of Parliament who are currently supporting the Mrs. May's government. So don't hold your breath for any advance in Northern Ireland with gay rights. It's a shame. I mean, a shame shameful. That's so close to here in our country, that should be the law, but it is. The other thing that Stonewall decided needed to do, having changed the law, was to change people's perception of the law and the behavior. We established legal equality, and then we would look to establish social equality. Because changing the law is actually quite easy. Might be encouraging to think that. We live in a small country, you know. You can bump into the Prime Minister in London, if you live there. You can bump into the director of the National Theatre, the person who runs the large industries. Everything to do with the media is organised from London. Everything's in London. It's all so easy. All the newspapers are there. You've only really got to make the same a speech once to the right audience, and case accomplished. Not true of America, which is, you know, you have to convince every state by state, 50 of them. No wonder it takes such a long time there. But here, it was relatively easy. But you're left with the residue. You're left with people's prejudices, which once established are very difficult to get rid of. It's only 5 years ago since Michael, a middle-aged civil servant, had landed a job after a long period out of work. And he was celebrating with his partner in Trafalgar Square in London. And 3 teenagers spied them. It was after hours. They'd had a drink or two, all of them. And the kids, 2 boys and a girl, pointed at Michael and his friend. Faggot! You know. Bender, you know. And Michael had had a drink or two and was feeling rather confident and said, "Oh, stop it. Yes, I'm a gay man and this is my partner." At which point one of the boys kicked the back of his legs and he buckled to the ground, and as his head hit the pavement, the girl, she was wearing high heels, stamped on his head. And nobody objected, and so she did it again until she'd killed him. On the grounds that she didn't like the fact that he was gay. I mean, where did she learn that? In a nice London inner city school? Well, she's in prison, of course, but Michael is dead. In our capital city, you know, in front of a lot of tourists. I mean, we don't do what they do in Iran, or did 2 years ago, when they took 2 16-year-old boys and strung them up by the hawser until they were dead. Their crime that they'd made love to each other. They were loving friends, and that was the reward. That'll teach them. And just as we get rid of Section 28, Putin arrives. He needs the support of the Orthodox Catholic Church, who have been repressed for years under communism and now want to visit their repression on somebody else, so they've chosen the gays. And in order to get their votes, he's presumably doing their bidding. And they've adopted Section 28 with the same wording. You may not You may not. What's the word that we use? It's so appalling. I forget what it is. But now it is illegal throughout Russia to speak positively about homosexuality in the hearing of anyone under the age of 18. So the law of that land is, we will keep our children in ignorance. The law of the land is, we will lie to our children. That country is going to roll out of control. The country that produced Tchaikovsky, Diaghilev, Nureyev. And they don't know what to do. I mean, the poor old gay activists hiding in corners. No Facebook of an easy nature for them to use. It's very difficult to be in contact with each other. If you send them a bit of money to spend on their publicity, they become foreign agents. They can declare it, but that's what they are. They're branded as traitors for sticking up for themselves. India, well, you have to laugh. You go to India, they're currently debating whether to get rid of the law which says that you can't make love if you're male with another male. It's a law that the British government introduced there. They didn't have any anti-gay laws until the Empire arrived, and so we bequeathed them the law which was the law of our land and gave it to them. Well, we got rid of our laws, and they've still got the British law. And you go and they say, don't you interfere with our culture. Don't you come with all your Western ideas. This is our law. No, it's not your law. No, it's the British law. We gave it to you. I've come to take it back. At least to apologize. So that's the state of India. It's not rational. Hatred of difference isn't rational, is it? So I say to these boys and girls, oh, sweethearts, we're all different. Just look around at the faces. You don't look like anybody else. Why should you think like anybody else? Why should you feel like anybody else? You are what you are. I am what I am. A little girl was on the front row, in front of the governors and the teachers and head teachers and her friends. I asked for questions. She said, have you got a boyfriend? I said, no, I don't at the moment. And 1,300 kids said, ah. And I thought, well, if a 13-year-old girl can ask a 78-year-old stranger, has he got a boyfriend? There's not much wrong with the world, really. Or not much wrong with our relationship. And I'll just end with this, and I don't know, it'd be interesting to see if you accord with it. There's a little group I met after the whole school. And opposite me, there was a little tough little girl called, a little tough little boy actually, called Finn. And I stumbled because he had been a tough little girl 6 months before. And then there was George here, 15-year-old, a bit weepy, saying, if your mummy is lesbian, and then your daddy tells you this morning over breakfast that he's gay, what do you do? Dear. I said, George, it'll be all right. Well, it will be all right, because he managed to articulate his problem. 2 gay parents. And the teacher said, George, we'll talk about it, how wonderful that you felt that you could, and that'll all be all right. And then there were 3 sassy gals in their 6th form sitting there, and one said, no, I'm talking for these 2. We're bi. Good, that's fine. But she said, if we're with a boy, presumably we're straight, are we? And then if we're with a girlfriend, presumably we're lesbian. We don't know where we are. We don't want labels. Oh. And the light went on. Yes, what labels do we possibly need? Except the one label that matters, your name. I am what I am. I suppose I only call myself gay so insistently because for years people called me queer. And I wanted to say, no, I'm not queer. I'm perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary person. And I'm gay. But actually, gay doesn't sort of sum it all up, does it? I don't know what spectrum of sexuality you feel you're on, but I'm not right one end or the other, and I'm dancing about in the middle, and I suspect we all are, really. And maybe that is the future, that the laws are non-specific. You may not discriminate on any fucking ground, because we're all different and the list is too long. LGBTQI, where does it go? I mean, where do we end? Let's drop a ball and just be what we are. Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for that introductory talk. It was fascinating, and I would like to sort of start by building on that. So we had Dustin Lance Black here on Saturday, and he was obviously he has been a major figure in LGBT plus activism, but he's done things in sort of, I suppose, a different way to you, since, I don't know, his work is very much driven by that. Do you feel that you've had can you sort of compare yourself to what he's done and sort of the two different approaches you have there?
I mean, my approach to gay rights is you do what you can, whoever you are, and some of it's useful and some of it's not, but now Dustin, or Lance, is, yes, his major writing, his Oscar was one, of course, for Milk, a gay script about Harvey Milk in San Francisco. It was expected of me when I came out that I would become a queer artist. I tell you what, if we could stop taking photographs now, you must have so many. And I get distracted. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
It's going to have to be, if you don't mind. Thank you. I feel it. I don't really like using this, but we have to use this because we're being recorded, and we're recorded for all the people who could have been sitting up there, actually.
Yeah.
What happened to them? I rather like
Fire,
around.
sort of fire safety.
But anyway, we have to use the mic. I like this chamber because, unlike the Oxford chamber, you don't need a microphone. It's cozy and it's comfy, and even if we're disagreeing, I feel we're all on the same side because we're in the same room. You know what I mean? Yeah. And theatres, I don't like microphones. Why? Because you're an audience, audio. You're not spectators, not viewers, audio. And when I produce my voice, it starts down here in the diaphragm, which is the source of the expression of most emotions. I mean, if you laugh, it's the diaphragm that moves up and down, and if you cry, it's this diaphragm. Nothing to do with the heart. The heart's just pumping away, but the diaphragm's working, and its main function is to press the air up through the lungs, up through your larynx, into your mouth, your cheeks, your teeth, your tongue. This is where sound goes, all those intimate, sexy, sex-making places, lips, and across. The space can be measured, lands on your eardrum. My diaphragm to your eardrum. But with this, no, it's my diaphragm, this microphone, and then your eardrum. That's why I don't like mics. But it was thought I might become a queer artist. So the great filmmaker and painter Derek Jarman, who'd been professionally gay all his life. I mean, he'd woven his career and his sexuality together absolutely, and was an icon. Was appalled at me because he thought I was a Johnny-come-lately. I was 49 before I came out. He accused me of being a straight man in gay clothing. I wasn't really gay. Oh, God. We got more trouble from other gays setting up Stonewall than from the rest of the community together. There was a dreadful rivalry. Stupid and unnecessary. But if I had dropped everything and did only gay material, then I think Derek would have been happy. But I said, I can't stop playing Macbeth and Iago and Richard III and King Lear. I mean, heterosexuality is far too fascinating a phenomenon to be left on one side. But you might wonder whether being gay makes a difference. I mean, to someone's artistry, someone's acting. Yes, it does. It's not one to do with proselytizing or being gay. It's of being able to say that you're gay. It's that confidence, the self-confidence. That's the difference between a gay man who's out and one who isn't. You can't get into trouble if you're open and honest. It's all there. And when you are, your life changes totally for the better. You will never meet a gay man or woman, or I dare say transgendered man or woman, who doesn't think their life has changed totally for the better once they can be honest about themselves. They've joined the human race. And that's enough for me. And then I just get on with being an actor.
No, and I just in terms of your point regarding the microphones, obviously you've had this remarkable connection with the stage. I remember seeing you at school in that remarkable performance you did with Judi Dench, performing Macbeth. And I asked Dinah Rigg a similar thing. What do you prefer, the stage or the screen? What's your preferred?
And what did she say?
She said the stage. The stage obviously is
of course,
pure,
you won't get an actor
form.
who wouldn't say the stage. It's the stage, the theatre, the theatre. Why? Because you're here. You know, it's life. We've all turned up, put it in the diary, bought the ticket, decided who to go with, had something to eat, had a drink, left the evening aside. It's an event. Who does that to go to the pictures or watch television? What's on? Shall we? Oh, nobody does that anymore. They do this. Oh, for the days when you could just turn the television on and it came on, you know. You didn't have to work out. People say, I think people can understand why theatre is the real test for an actor, because not only have we worked out roughly what we want to do and roughly what the playwright wants to do, we then have to know how to do it, which is deliver it and engage you. So there's lots you have to do. And when you're making a film with the audience, the camera here, you don't have to do anything. That is the point. If you do anything, it'll be observed, and you don't want to do anything other than be. Well, be isn't quite acting, is it? So the problems of delivering a performance are so interesting to me. I hope by the end of our session I'll have looked every one of you in the eye at some point. That's the idea. So we were here. You and me. Film, I could be dead and you'd still be watching me. But, of course, it is thrilling making a film. Absolutely thrilling. And if you're doing it with the right people and the script's worthwhile, and, oh my goodness, if people go and, if it gets released, all these ifs, and finally, if people enjoy what you've organized for them, then it's very fulfilling. But you're not there. It's all happening somewhere else. So theatre for me, yes.
And in terms of character, do you find it easier to play a character who's like yourself? Or do you prefer a little bit of distance?
Oh dear. I don't think about these things normally, so when you ask
No, sorry, that's all right.
it may be very interesting to you, and perhaps it should be interesting to me, but it's not something I ponder. No. I've actually forgotten what you asked me. No, come on. It's a good question. What was it?
Yeah. No, I said... No, that's fine. No, I asked...
I'm not sending you up. Oh, well, not really. No, but anyway...
That's fine. No.
I'm
just trying to remember now.
Is it easier to play somebody like yourself? It's a very good question.
Well, I thought so, yeah.
It is. You won't get this in my autobiography because I'm not going to write one. So, I acted to get away from myself. I mean, as a kid. And by chance, I was quite good at it. I could copy people. I was a bit of a mimic, not very much of one, but I could get away with it, and people liked it. And they couldn't like Ian because they didn't know Ian. They didn't know that I was in love with their son. And how could I tell them? But I put on a costume and a funny beard and a funny walk, and oh, Ian, how wonderful. Yeah, I found my way to get through, which was disguise. And that worked when I became a professional actor as well. A lot of professional actors are gay and lesbian, for that reason, I think. But what I rapidly discovered, what was much more difficult than any sort of acting like that, was in playing a character of my own age, who looked like me, who spoke like me, who walked like me, and yet was not me. And I found that very, very difficult. I particularly eschewed doing love scenes. I didn't feel confident making love to a woman on stage or screen because I didn't know how it was done. I played a very famous heterosexual, John Profumo, in a film called Scandal. He was a British politician who may well have been president of the Union, I have an idea.
Probably Oxford.
Probably Oxford, yeah. Because he got into a few sexual problems and had to resign, but we made a film about him, and I played him. And it was just after I'd come out, and I thought, I better just show people that I'm still interested in normality of that sort. So, but my first scene was having to make love to the leading lady, albeit under silk sheets in the family bed. So I asked a friend of mine, Edward Petherbridge, the actor, I said, Edward, can you give me a few pointers? So he drew a little, I've still got it, not quite on the back of an envelope, but close, of various little positions, matchstick man and woman. I'm an expert on the missionary position. But that's about it. But now to delve further into my non-existent autobiography, I've just played King Lear, and I have had a revelation about acting, which I might try and share with you. I don't know, are there other actors here, people who act a bit? Are there? Just a few? Yeah. Well, you probably do what I do, and what everybody does. You think about the character. How old are they? What was their life like before the play or the film started? What was the backstory? King Lear, why didn't he have his first child until he was 40 years old? Why did he have his last child when he was 60? Does that mean he had 2 wives? I certainly wore 2 wedding rings. Had he been a good king? What sort of king had he been? Had he been a tyrant? Had he been a priest king? Was he a warrior king? Did he really love Cordelia best? Actually seems to like Regan quite a lot until she turns on him. Did he rape her, as one actor who played King Lear confidently told me his Lear had done? Actually, Shakespeare's not interested in all that. The actor might be, but Shakespeare isn't. In Shakespeare, there's no such thing as a character. It's not a word he would have understood. There's a part, and you're part of the play. And my advice to anyone trying to do Shakespeare is forget all that normal stuff you do with acting, and say to yourself 4 words: once upon a time. And that'll do. That's all you need. Once upon a time, there was an old king, and he had 3 daughters, and he loved the youngest one best. And he divided up the kingdom and crikey. It doesn't help to know that there were 2 queens. You don't need to. All you have to do is say the lines. This is the revelation to me. You don't have to interpret them. Now, if you're angry, of course you've got to be angry, but you don't have to really work out whether you've been angry before. It's not really very helpful. And I found that I could just relax. I could come onto the stage. And King Lear, this is what links with your very good question, King Lear was me. He walked like me, he looked like me, he'd grown a beard. I've just tried cutting it today. I do apologize. If there's a barber in the house, could we see him later on? So I can't wait now to do King Lear again. I may do it in London, if we can find the right size theatre. Don't want anywhere bigger than this. And no mics, of course. And no acting. Speaking, no character. And people would say to me, oh, that moment when you remembered the fool. Didn't know what they were talking about. I'd said the lines, they were there, and a revelation to me, oh my God, yes, he was thinking about the fool. Shakespeare's done all the work. And probably the history of Shakespeare productions of actors and particularly directors getting in the way.
and just
Did you follow that?
Yes, yeah, I did. I did, yeah.
Because I'm still trying to articulate it, and it's not easy.
No,
It also means that you can be different every night, genuinely different, totally different.
Do you think your Lear changed? Because you did it in 2007 as well, didn't you?
Well, in the first one, I did the normal way.
Yeah.
Worked it all out in advance, and then, in performance, presented it. I had no idea what I was going to do in King Lear. I didn't know whether I was going to stand up or sit down or shout or whisper or hit somebody. It was all in the moment, all happening now. And the connection between that and filming, of course, is that when you're filming, you have to do it in the moment. It has to be happening. It can't be something that's been repeated. You're doing it for the first time, and the camera is there. I think it's because I've enjoyed filming that I now want to do that in the theatre. And the other actors say they didn't mind not quite knowing where I was going to be or what I was going to do. Mind you, I was playing the king. And they will get their chance to be horrible to me, so it's... We'll see whether it works for any other stuff. But, you know, I'm 78. I can't be bothered repeating it. What's the point? It's too late. Too many people to act for. So I'm just going to get on with enjoying myself and trying, as ever, to be on Shakespeare's side and relate to him and think of him as just having left the rehearsal room and to go to the loo and him coming back in and say, what the hell are you doing with my play? And you must be able to answer him as little as possible.
Thank you so much, Srim, for having a brief chat with me. I think now I'll open it to the audience, because I'm sure you've got significantly better and more erudite questions than mine. So, anyone at all? Anyone take your fancy? Anyone? Yeah.
They all take my fancy.
Oh, can I have a person in the sort of broccoli green jumper at the back there?
Hello.
So I guess if you're colorblind, you can't do your job, can you? Really?
No, it's the main requirement on the application form.
This is in relation to your talk. A couple of weeks ago, when you saw the manner in which Kevin Spacey came out, what was your initial reaction?
Say that again.
When you saw the manner in which Kevin Spacey came out, what was your initial reaction?
I'm not going to talk about this because I don't think I've got anything to say to help the situation. But when I saw that he'd come out, I thought redemption may be possible. That was my reaction. The implications of it for other people, that he was conflating paedophilia with, or underage sex, or attempted underage sex, with the rest of his life, which overlaps with mine, then, no, won't do. But It's, these revelations are disturbing, and I suppose, of course they're disturbing, and therefore, of course, it's right that we should be a party to them. I had a dear friend who was falsely accused. And he's had 2 miserable years. Paul Gambaccini, who the radio broadcaster, sacked temporarily by the BBC, charged by 2 people who eventually had to withdraw their charges because it was proven that they were mischief makers. How he survived, I don't know. Lost most friends. Because we tend to believe, don't we? Somebody says something like that of somebody else, we think, no smoke. I'm now not talking about the subject. I've gone on from there. So, I think in public it's probably better for me not to try and be wiser than anybody else.
Any more questions at all? I'm going to suggest that this next one after this one goes to the man up there in the balcony because the mic's going to get round to there, but I'm going to take one down here, if that's okay, before that, so the person who I'm pointing at directly. So the one after that will go to the person in the balcony, but I think it's going to take a bit of time to get the microphone round.
Oh, thank you for your very interesting...
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Is your name Mike?
No, my name is not Mike. My name is Andre.
All right, nice to see you.
Very nice to get the chance to see you talk, and it was very interesting. I have a question, going back to your discussion of not playing a character but playing the part. Is there any character type or combination of traits you will find interesting to play which you haven't played yet? Is there any particular character you think you'd really enjoy playing because they're complicated or whatever?
No, I don't think there is. One of the silly things about actors, if you have a success playing one sort of part, that's the only part you ever get offered. I mean, after Gandalf, nothing but old men. And once, twice, actually 3 times, God. Don't you wish you'd played Dumbledore? No, I don't. I played... I played the real wizard, you know. And I've never had a bucket list of parts I want to play. I mean, some people say, oh, I long to play Napoleon. Well, what would be the point? Unless it were a fantastic part. Well, then, if it's a fantastic part, I'd be interested in playing Napoleon. Actually, I've played him in a Bernard Shaw play. Man of Destiny. I'm quite reconciled now, being the age I am, to play people of my own age. And the real difference between having played King Lear just now and having played it 10 years ago is that I'm now closer to King Lear's actual age. And I began to notice that in practically every scene he says, I'm old. And that's what old people like me spend their lives doing, with each other. How are you feeling? Oh, old. We're always complaining about our ailments, whilst I, unburdened, says King Lear, crawl toward death. That about sums up what it's like to be 78, you know. Just round the corner. Oh, at last. I'm a very foolish, fond old man. 80 and upward. Not an hour more nor less. That's what it feels like when you're 80. So that's another good reason why I could play King Lear in the way that I was trying to do, I didn't have to characterize him too much because he was so typically old. All right, that'll do it for that.
Perfect. And the question from up there, from
Oh,
the
yes,
gallery.
hello.
Serene, hello. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
The late chemistry Nobel laureate Harry Kroto, who was admired by many, of course, spoke whenever he had a chance to talk about his life, to give lectures about his life. He spoke very fondly of going to school with you and acting on stage. And I wondered,
Who is this?
Harry,
I didn't hear Terry.
Harry Kroto, Sir Harold.
Oh, Harry,
Kroto.
yes, of course. Yes, yes.
And I wondered if you have a story you could share.
Oh, Harry Kroto.
And secondly, I quite loved your plea for individualism and the abandonment of labels. Do you think today's identity politics helps or hinders in getting there? Thank you.
Well, on that point, I mean, I think we're going through a period of transition, you know. Getting from one place of ignorance to a place of understanding and acceptance, I suppose. So we're bound to go back a bit and then go forward a bit. And yes, I think, of course, we've got to all come to terms with what it is to be transgendered. An absolute mystery to me. I didn't know anybody who was transgendered when I was growing up. Oh, a few famous people. I had one friend until about 3 years ago. And then suddenly, every school I go to has at least one kid who's going through the transgender journey. And I have to learn about it. I'm bone ignorant. And I think most of us are. And until we have a bit of understanding, we're not going to have much sympathy. So, yeah, labels can be very provoking in a good way. Harry Kroto, Nobel Prize winner, was in my former school. Sir Harry Kroto. There were two sirs in my former school. Well, I'll tell you a story about me, which Harry used to tell. He was a hard worker. My goodness me. He discovered things in physics and chemistry and was renowned in his field. And he came to Cambridge and had to do the usual things to get into Cambridge, you know. Talk well, write well, do the exams, impress the director of studies and all that. I turned up at St. Catherine's rather late one afternoon in the maybe in this time of year, I can't really remember now, a bit later on, no, February. And Tom Henn, the Anglo-Irish Director of Studies in English, sat me down, he gave me a cigarette. Can you imagine going into an interview today and say, do you want a cigarette? Oh, thank you, yes, I will. And some South African sherry. Well, even I knew that you don't serve South African sherry. You know. When you're trying to get rid of apartheid, you don't buy South African sherry. But Tom did. Oh, dear. And he sat me down. He said, I see you are an actor. I said, oh, yes, I've done a bit at school. Yes, what was the last part you played? I said, Shakespeare. Yes, what was the part? Henry V, sir. Do me a speech. So I stubbed out the bachelor cigarette and I put down the South African sherry and I stood up on the chair and said, once more! Once on the breach, dear friends, once more! And I went right the way through and he gave me an exhibition. I became a minor scholar of St. Catherine's College on that audition, the best audition I've ever given. And Harry Kroto quite rightly said all he had to do to get into Cambridge was do what he likes doing, is showing off on a chair.
Fantastic. Do we have any more questions at all? I'm going to take in the third row there. So glasses, yeah.
Hello.
Can you just wait until? Sorry,
You'll
sorry
have
about
to- you'll have to be amplified.
Microphones.
Are you special people sitting here?
Hi. Over here.
Hello.
I was wondering about your time at Cambridge, what the atmosphere was like for other gay students, like even in the theatre, like what was it like to be a gay student at Cambridge?
Ooh. We hadn't invented the word gay then. You know, the word gay was picked out of the dictionary by some activists in America. Queer, faggot, no, gay, lovely, gay. Look up gay. It used to mean prostitute. Funny, isn't it? She's so gay. We called ourselves Camp. Is he Camp? I think so. Oh. But I don't know. I led a very sheltered life, and I didn't have sex till the end of my 3 years. I don't know where it was going on. I don't think there was very much of it. But perhaps there was, and I didn't know. Oh, dear. I tell you, if sex comes your way, grab it. No provision whatsoever for your dean, who was in charge of your moral well-being, to attend to the misery that you might be having because you were gay and couldn't cope with it. 2 colleges for women, all the rest were for men. And they didn't address the idea that some of those men might have been sleeping with each other, because you weren't allowed to take women back to college. Well, what were you to do? Well, like me, you were celibate, or I suppose. Damn it, they were all at it. It was a wretched place for anyone, for a misfit. Yeah. You had to be in by 10 o'clock at night. I mean, in the college. And you had to wear your gown after dusk in the street, and people chased after you, called bulldogs, and fined you if you weren't wearing your gown. Who wears a gown now? Do you? No. Mind you, I rather like the gown. No, I liked it all. I liked the buildings. I liked staying up late. And I knew I'd come to Cambridge, and I knew I was an adult for the first meal I had in hall. It was venison. Venison. We didn't have venison in Bolton. Venison. And I ate my way through it, and there was some cabbage on the plate, and I left it. I'd never left anything on my plate in my life. Think about the starving children in China, I was told. You know. Anyone who lived through the war ate everything on their plate. There mightn't be another plate. And I left the cabbage. And the waiter came and took the plate from me, carrying my cabbage, and I thought, I've grown up. I left my cabbage. That'd be a good title for an autobiography, wouldn't it?
I'll take one from down here. This is a microphone.
Extra loud. Oh, thank you. Hi, thank you for being here. Switching gears a little bit, Amazon just announced that they are releasing a Lord of the Rings TV series. Do you have any plans to be involved in that? It looks like I just informed you of that.
Galadriel. Well, it's funny, this, because I said to Peter Jackson after he'd done Lord of the Rings, yes, you should carry on, you should do The Hobbit, and don't make it into a film, make it into a long-running TV series. You can have all your high-end action and all the stuff that goes with the big blockbusters on the big screen, but have it on the television every Saturday for an hour. You could put everyone into the story. And they didn't think that was a very good idea. So, but now you tell me they're going to do it. Well, it's been on TV before, you know, because before we made our films, there was an animated version of The Hobbit, I think it was, or was it Lord of the Rings? One of them. Lord of the Rings. Bashki. Am I right? Yeah. BBC Radio did Lord of the Rings. So I wasn't the first Gandalf by any manner of means. I should be on to my agent, I tell you. Because Gandalf's 7,000 years old. Absolutely no reason why I shouldn't play it. Do you agree? Doesn't sound very enthusiastic. I suppose you want Mike Gambon. Sometimes I get handed photographs of Dumbledore. Would you mind signing that, please? I certainly would, I say. I certainly wouldn't mind signing that, but Mike Gambon, who's a much nicer man than me, I said, what do you do? Do you ever get photographs of Gandalf to sign? Oh, all the time. I said, oh, good, what do you do? He said, I just sign your name.
I think we've got time for about one or two more. So I'm going to take one from... No, I'm going to take one from the guy in the blue jumper there. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Wolfram from Clare. Quick question, going back to Lear. So I think last year Brian Blessed did his version. He fainted on stage because it's an exhausting role to play. Did you find that your new approach to Lear, in just letting it sort of be you, was that less exhausting?
It was.
Thank you.
It was. And we were also doing it in a smaller theatre probably than Brian was working in. Yes. It is hard work. It is hard work. I mean, there's a lot to say. And you're using a lot of inner passion, and you're using your mind as well. I mean, there's lots to cope with. And then after about 90 minutes, King Lear leaves the stage, and if you have the interval where you normally have it, you've got 40 minutes off stage. I used to go to bed and wake up for the later scenes, which are sweeter, quieter, less energetic. Yeah. Well, Paul Scofield played the most remarkable King Lear of my lifetime for Peter Brook. You see it on film still. He was 44. That's probably a good age to play King Lear, really. Come on, a few more questions, because we've
Yeah.
Come on.
Hi, I just want to say my younger brother is gay, but he hasn't had the confidence to come out to my parents, because my parents are quite conservative. I was wondering if you have any advice for him, any confidence boost or anything. He's 19, so he's just fresh into uni.
Where does he live? Where does he live? York. Well, you can't give advice to somebody you don't know, can you really? But from my experience, and I suspect it's true of him as it is for many others, if you're having problems with your parents, go to your sibling. So he came out to you first. Well, there you are. He did the right thing. He's got an ally. You can hold his hand. You can hear what they said to him. How old are your parents? Well, they should know better. They should. They've lived through enormous changes in this country. Perhaps they haven't been reading about them, or they didn't think they knew any gay people who they affected. I expect he'll be all right at York. There'll be lots of gay men and women and others there. There's only really one advantage to being gay over not being gay, which is that you have to come out. You have that challenge. And it's a challenge that never goes away. I mean, every new person you meet who assumes that you're straight, you've got to come out to them if you want to. But at the moment when your parents say, come here, that's all right. Oh dear, and hug him, will be the sweetest memory that they'll have of him. And him of them. But that acceptance It's a pity if they're going to have to learn how to do it. It should be enough that he honours them by being honest, which I hope he can do one day. And you'll be there outside the door, and he'll come out and say, "It's all right." Yes, of course, it's all right. No. I have very few regrets, but one is that I never told my parents. My mother died when I was 12, breast cancer, and my father in a car crash when I was 24. So I didn't complete the business of being their son, which is to be honest about what they'd created. Well, good luck. Give him my best wishes, will you? Yeah. I can recommend a couple of good gay bars in Leeds. Well, I don't know. Come on, you're in charge, not me.
Very nominally. I think what we'll do is we'll take one question from the person who caught my eye at the top there, and then maybe one more, and we'll have to call it a day, sadly.
Okay, thank you. Throughout my A-levels, I had a poster on my pinboard of you as Gandalf. And it stared at me as I worked, and the words on it were, "If you do not study, you shall not pass." And I wondered, now I have the opportunity to see it in real life, whether you might reenact that scene briefly for us.
You couldn't afford it. How do you think I got $183 million in the bank? Well, I did it for the kids this afternoon. I did it for the kids this morning, so I might as well do it for the kids here. Though there are variations. Do you know, in the books, Gandalf never says you shall not pass. He says you cannot pass. Sorry, I got it wrong. But it sounded rather good, so we left it. All is not as it seems in films, and we filmed that scene with the Balrog in the studio. It was an empty studio. It was just me and a yellow line that I walked along, and that was the bridge of Khazad-dûm. And I had to pretend that, there was stuff there. And in front of me was the Balrog, which I was shouting at. And it was represented by a yellow tennis ball on top of a pole. That was the. So I said to Peter Jackson, the director, I said, what's he going to look like, the Balrog? Oh, I don't know yet, Ian. You don't know? Well, how am I meant to? He said it's going to be very big and black, lots of smoke. Horrible, really horrible. So I gave it my best. You shall not bounce!
One more, yeah. Right, one more question. Try and beat that. Right, go on. It's a challenge. I'm going to take that person there in the tartan. Is it tartan?
Hi. What would be your single most important piece of advice for a fresher trying to figure out their life at Cambridge?
That I've been given.
Sorry?
That I've been given.
Or what would you give to us, or what would you tell yourself?
Oh, I see.
If you were standing here as a fresher?
Oh, I see. Oh, dear. Well, I don't know. people don't get wiser because they get older, you know. No. But it does occur to me that, you know, if you have a deathbed scene, and I do sometimes fantasize about that, it will include the words, I wish I had. So my advice to you is don't get to that deathbed scene with too long a list of things that you wish you'd done. Do them now while you can. And that for me would involve travel, sex, relationships, other people, more travel, learning languages, learning to play the piano, getting angry. I'm going to leave you with a little present, and it's written by William Shakespeare, and it's from a play you may not know called Sir Thomas More, which he helped to write. Odd idea, isn't it, that the Elizabethans used to write plays together, like EastEnders scriptwriters or Coronation Street people write those scripts together. When I did Coronation Street, I did 10 episodes, and each episode was written by a different person, but my character had the same voice. Amazing. Thomas More, this was a play that was not performed in his lifetime. He got his first professional performance in 1964 when I played Thomas More. So you're looking at the last act, you'll be able to say, I created a part by William Shakespeare. Better than that, it's the only sample of Shakespeare's writing of a text, of a script, in existence. It's this speech. I think British Museum or British Library, I'm not sure which, but on display all the time because it's so unique. Looks like a fair copy, as if he just thought it up on the spur of the moment. I suspect some friend said, will you write me down that wonderful speech? And the scene takes place on May Day. It's the May Day riots in Trafalgar, what's now Trafalgar Square, St. Martin in the Fields. And the apprentice boys are out, shouting the odds, complaining about strangers, by which they mean immigrants. They take their jobs, you see. And the authorities send out Thomas More to put down the riot, and he does it in two ways. One, by appealing to their sense of order. Can't go around shouting, threatening. Behave. And secondly, being by Shakespeare, with an appeal to their humanity, which you may think is relevant to a lot of what we've been on about this evening. So I think I'll have to do this without the microphone. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Just about.
The sound in the crowd shouts that the strangers should be removed, and Thomas More says, "But grant them removed, and grant that this your noise hath chid down all the majesty of England. Imagine that you see the wretched strangers, their babies at their backs, with their poor luggage, plodding to the ports and coasts for transportation. And that you sit as kings in your desires, authority quite silenced by your brawl, and you in rough of your opinions clothed. What had you got? I'll tell you, we were taught how insolence and strong hand should prevail, how order should be quelled. And by this pattern, not one of you should be an aged man, for other ruffians, as their fancies roar, with self-same hand, self-reason, and self-right, would shark on you. And men, like ravenous fishes, feed on one another. You put down strangers, kill them, cut their throats, and leave the majesty of roaring lion to slip in like a hound. How desperate as you are, wash your foul minds with tears, and those same hands that you like rebels lift against the peace, lift up for peace, and your unreverent knees, make them your feet to kneel, to be forgiven. Say now the king, as he is clement, if the offender mourn, should so much come too short of your great trespass, as but to banish you. Whither would you go? What country, by the nature of your errors, should give you harbour? Do you to France or Flanders, to any German province, Spain or Portugal, nay, anywhere that not adheres to England? Why, you must needs be strangers. Would you be pleased to find a nation of such barbarous temper that breaking out in hideous violence would not afford you an abode on earth, whet their detested knives against your throats, spurn you like dogs, and like as if that God owned not, nor made not you, nor that the elements were all appropriate to your comfort, but chartered unto them? What would you think to be thus used? This is the stranger's case, and this your mountainish inhumanity. Be nice to each other.
So I'm going to do a quick summary. I'm not going to do that. Just one more thing. Obviously, we can thank Syrian for that remarkable event when we head out. There is one thing which I'm going to tell you all now, which hopefully you should be quite excited to hear. It's regarding the Stephen Hawking event next week, so you're going to be the first people to know about this. The ballot is going live for that tomorrow at 9 a.m. It will be open until 12 midnight on Saturday night, and then we'll be picking, much like this event, there. So we're going to ticket probably slightly more for that. So make sure you've got that all noted down in your diaries, because I'm sure that will be not quite the event we had tonight, but a suitable replacement or a suitable sequel to this Cambridge.
Should I tell you my Stephen Hawking story?
Yeah. I mean, I was sort of.
Have you finished? Have you done?
No.
Is that it?
Yeah. I've finished. Yeah, go.
All right. Well, we were both involved in the Paralympic Games. He is the star, of course. I don't know if you saw it on TV. It was a very dramatic moment when the whole of the stadium went black, and then the spotlight, and there he was. Well, I was involved, and of course there was a backstage area, and one of his cohorts said, would I like to meet Professor Hawking? Of course I wouldn't. So I went forward, and there he was in his chair with his nurse, and I think his current wife, and then a lot of equipment under the chair, which was run by an IT guy, and the computer had just broken down. So there I am, about to talk to a man who can't talk, and the nurse said, "Oh, it's all right. If you ask a yes or no question, and if the answer is no, yes, he'll wink with his right eye. If the answer is no, he'll wink with his left eye." So I said, "Very nice to meet you. Are you enjoying yourself?" And he went, which means yes and no. You could tell he had a sense of humor. But we couldn't get any further. I went outside, look at my words for what I was going to have to do, and I came back, and the computer was working again. And leaning over the side of his chariot was a very busty, attractive young lady staring into his eyes, and he was staring straight into her cleavage. And I read what he'd put up on his computer screen. Are you married?
And on that note, Syrian, thank you so much. Thank you.